Beyond the reach of human exploration and conventional communication lies the chilling darkness of the intergalactic void, an expanse beyond the limits of both man-made spacecraft and psychic connection. This vast, desolate region is protected by the Great Barrier, a formidable boundary that separates one galaxy from another, where the fabric of space and time intertwines to keep these distant worlds apart. Despite its seeming emptiness, this realm is far from lifeless. An ancient and unyielding intelligence extends its influence through the cold darkness, its countless eyes fixed on the shimmering stars of our galaxy. This entity, known as the Great Devourer, moves silently between the stars, driven by an unrelenting hunger for destruction. It takes the form of the Tyranid race, an avaricious, hive-minded organism that operates as a single conscious entity spanning many light years. Every individual Tyranid is but a cell within the vast collective brain, controlled by an eternal hive mind that contains a billion creatures, all functioning as parts of one monstrous organism. From the galaxy's edge, they swarm in countless numbers, yet each remains an extension of the hive's unified will, the very essence of an organism that consumes entire worlds. The Tyranids are relentless predators, invading the galaxy from the void and descending like a plague on thriving planets. Their arrival resembles a swarm of insects devastating crops, consuming everything in their path and leaving behind barren rocks. They pose a universal threat, their numbers continuously growing as they devour all forms of life across countless worlds. For centuries, humanity's scholars, biologists and xenologists of the Imperium have studied these alien creatures, yet even amid the chaos of the Third Tyrannic War, understanding remains elusive. The Tyranids' biological nature sets them apart from any known technology. Every aspect of their armament and craft is alive. Their armor consists of chitinous plates, and many Tyranids possess natural defenses such as adaptive camouflage or cloud-like spores that conceal them. Even their weaponry, be it bioships or organic artillery, is alive, often formed from grotesque symbiotes fused to their hosts for combat. Their projectiles include monstrous living missiles like armored beetles, corrosive acid, or bioelectrical discharges that sear flesh. Other weapons comprise toxin spore clouds, parasitic entities, and bizarre yet deadly bioconstructs that have evolved solely to spread death and chaos. The Tyranids demonstrate an unparalleled capacity for biological innovation, transforming life itself into tools for destruction. Everything about their race appears designed solely for war, making them not just predators, but embodiments of relentless biological conquest. Despite centuries of battle and countless encounters, humanity and other civilizations still grapple with understanding their true nature, an ongoing puzzle driven by an organism that is as mysterious as it is deadly. Throughout each galaxy, the hive mind manifests as no more than a basic form of consciousness, often just a single cell within an immense universe-spanning organism. This alien presence, dubbed by humanity as the hive mind, appears to steer the relentless advance of the Tyranid swarms towards the galaxy's core. It does so through a vast network of synaptic webbing maintained by specialized creature nodes immersed within Tyranid armies, exerting influence across battlefields, star systems, and even the void between worlds. This collective consciousness extends its reach beyond physical boundaries, guiding the swarm's movements as they venture through dark space, flocks of bioships of grotesque design, manifesting the hive's will in tandem with the web that binds them. It allows the Tyranids to coordinate their attacks with a supernatural precision, attacking as a unified monstrous entity. Humanity remains largely in the dark about the true nature of this entity, with many attempts to interpret it as everything from a godlike force to a psychic predator or a gestalt consciousness. Yet, these explanations only scratch the surface, as the hive mind's essence remains fundamentally inscrutable. To the galaxy's sentient races, the hive mind appears as an incomprehensible force, alien, predatory, and vastly beyond their understanding. As distant as they are from grasping this entity, they see only prey rather than partner, with the hive mind viewing all biological life as nothing more than food. It perceives no need for communication or mutual existence, instead seeking to consume and assimilate everything in its path. Since the earliest Tyranid hive fleets appeared from the depths of extragalactic space, their numbers have grown exponentially. Each new fleet arrives with grotesque, ever-evolving adaptations, deploying nightmarish strategies of predation. These bioships coil and probe like the tendrils of some unfathomable sea monster, pushing inward from the galaxy's fringes and converging on the galactic plane, crushing worlds beneath their collective hunger. Most civilizations first detect the Tyranids through a psychic phenomenon known as the shadow in the warp, an ominous psychic fog that precedes the swarms. This static muffles all attempts at communication, isolating worlds and sowing unprovoked paranoia and fear among their populations. Psychers suffer particularly, as their heightened senses make them especially vulnerable to this insidious psychic assault. Attempting to use their powers amidst the shadow often drives them to madness or destruction, overwhelmed by the relentless alien static. Finally, the Tyranid fleets emerge from the darkness as terrifying predators from the depths of space, their hive ships rising ominously to dominate. These vessels crush any defenses, besieging orbiting stations and warships, before disgorging countless trillions of bioorganisms onto the target worlds. The initial resistance from planetary defenses is fierce. Starships respond with lasers and fighters, aircraft spiral against the descending tide, and ground forces scramble to hold their positions. Yet no matter how brave the defenders, they face an unstoppable foe, driven by an insatiable hunger that seeks only to devour, absorb, and ultimately consume everything in its path. The battle raged fiercely as defenses unleashed waves of destruction, reducing swarms of Tyranids to smoldering heaps of ash and bone. Despite relentless attacks, the relentless alien horde only pressed forward, overwhelming guns, destroying aircraft, and tearing apart war engines. As their crews fell victim to the microscopic spores circulating among the monsters, the defenders' lines crumbled, turning from stalwart protectors into frantic, fleeing prey. The planet's very environment turned against them, as toxins and corrosive substances released by the Tyranids' bioengineered tissues dissolved everything into raw biological matter, primed for consumption. Only once the hive's appetite was sated did the Tyranids begin to feed, channeling vital fluids through massive feeding tubes that drew sustenance back to their monstrous hive ships, which relentlessly drained the planet until nothing remained but a barren, lifeless orb drifting silently in the void. The first recorded encounter with this alien menace occurred on the world of Tian Primus in the year 4745 of the M41. This initial clash marked humanity's first confrontation with the Tyranid threat, setting into motion a brutal expansion of their deadly rampage through imperial space. Yet, it is difficult to pinpoint precisely when humanity first faced these creatures. Some accounts suggest that humans and the Eldari of Craftworld Enden discovered a bizarre Tyranid megastructure on the jungle world, Zoria, in the M35th millennium. Spanning an entire continent, this colossal hive projected a fierce psychic signal that inflicted fatal seizures upon Eldari populations, fueling rumors among the Ordo Xenos that such structures are remnants of titanic beasts, perhaps created or maintained by the Tyranid hive fleets for purposes still unknown. Furthermore, tales from the Helican sector in the M36th millennium speak of winged horrors, nightmarish creatures indistinguishable from the feared Tyranid bioforms, clashing with Ordo intelligence. The Tau Empire is believed to have fought the toxic swarms of High Fleet Gorgon for centuries, though definitive records remain elusive. Meanwhile, other races, like the Necrons, have encountered insidious signs of the Tyranid advance, though their reports are often fragmentary or apocalyptic. Entire alien civilizations overrun by the Tyranid menace vanished without leaving remnants of their stories. For the few humans with awareness of the threat and the daring ones seeking to oppose it, the initial contact with the Tyranids on Tian Primus remains the earliest confirmed encounter with this horrific adversary. The first signs of the coming nightmare emerged when Imperial explorers, conducting a census of worlds near Tiran Primus, uncovered entire planets stripped of all biological life, leaving nothing behind but stark, sterile surfaces where once thriving ecosystems had existed. These visions of devastation foreshadowed the devastating scale of the invasion yet to come. Surviving on barren, battered planets, the explorer uncovered a grim reality. The first worlds to be consumed by the Hive fleet's colossal forces after their long voyage through the silent void. Up to that point, they had only fed on uninhabited planets, their reserves drained from years of inactivity in the emptiness of space. Soon, they would transform the newly absorbed biomass into vast legions of monstrous war beasts, ready to strike in earnest. Yet, the explorer lacked the broader perspective needed to understand the true danger lurking behind this ominous discovery. Meanwhile, the remote outpost persisted in submitting reports about lifeless worlds, but warnings went unheeded. The only reason the system had a chance of preparedness was pure luck. A returning survey vessel spotted an enormous cloud of unidentified objects near the edge of the Tian system. As it turned out, these objects were bizarre living minds. The survey ship fought its way free from the converging cloud and limped back to Tian Primus, bearing a critical warning. Just a few days later, the invasion commenced, led by the Adeptus Mechanicus commander, Magos Varak. Tian Primus, nestled amidst an ancient chain of volcanic islands, was no easy target. The planet's defenses had been carefully designed to withstand fierce storms and the deadly creatures of Tyranid's wild seas. It boasted a substantial garrison of the Adeptus Mechanicus, ASR military units, multiple squadrons of fighter craft, and 4 gigantic orbital lasers embedded within fortified silos protected by powerful void shields. These formidable defenses, supported by gun emplacements and bunkers, had held against previous assaults by alien and heretical forces over centuries. However, the formidable Hive fleet's onslaught proved overwhelming. As alien ships entered orbit, the planet's defenses opened fire immediately. For over an hour, the skies blazed with incandescent blasts from the laser batteries, desperately trying to repel the invaders. Despite the fierce resistance, the alien vessels began to withdraw, their cooling systems strained to the limit as the lasers overheated. In an attempt to intercept the retreating fleet, Magos Varak ordered his fleet to pursue the withdrawal vessels. But this strategy was ultimately flawed. The pursuing forces entered a vast shifting spore cloud that cloaked the alien fleet's true strength. They soon realized that fewer than a dozen bioships had been destroyed out of a fleet numbering thousands. The alien vessels had successfully lured away the cruiser squadrons from Tian, only to turn back and unleash a savage attack. The Hive fleet descended with relentless fury. The slaughter was brutal, ships torn apart by vast biotendrils, others rendered lifeless by boarding swarms of foul bioforms like Genin stealers and rippers. The Imperial cruisers were obliterated one after another. With their fleet decimated, the Hive fleet returned directly to Tian Primus, unleashing chaos. Thousands of Tian's sites were ravaged, many ships shot down, yet countless more crashed into the tumultuous seas, where waters churned wildly in the wake of the destruction. As the invaders erupted from their pods, they tore through the fierce inhabitants of the Tyran ocean worlds, quickly scaling the walls of the outpost. Initial volleys from the disciplined Imperial Guard pushed the alien horde back, officers shouting orders amidst the pouring rain. A deadly barrage of firepower sliced through wave after wave of Hormigans and Gene Stealers, turning their bodies to mangled wreckage that choked the rain-soaked killing zones between the bastions. In the skies, Thunderbolt fighters darted through lightning-lit clouds, precision bombing incoming pods before shifting focus to new targets. Suddenly, the northern defense laser went silent as thousands of gargoyles leapt into its stream of destructive beams, clogging the massive projectors. Moments later, the eastern defense laser also fell silent when an enormous Carnifex broke through the reinforced steel wall, trampling defenders and smashing into coolant lines. Without warning, the thunderbolts spun from the skies as their engines faltered, spores clogging their intakes and shrieking harpies ripping apart cockpits. As more sections of the network went dark, the Tyranid assault advanced into the base itself. Within an hour, the outpost was almost entirely lost. Bastions had fallen or been breached, and the defense lasers had fallen silent. Even the most steadfast guardsmen of Kachin, men and women who considered themselves the finest soldiers, abandoned their posts and fled into the relentless rain, seeking an escape that didn't exist. Small pockets of resistance lingered under the watchful eyes of brave officers, but they too were gradually overwhelmed, until only the command bunker remained. The bunker's walls cracked under relentless strikes, flashing displays showing the chaos outside. Varno watched helplessly as aliens rampaged through the base, destroying everything in their path. Finally, the fortress's adamantine gate shattered inward, flooding the command complex with the Tyranid swarm. Guardsmen and Scary fought desperately with flamers and fosecs, but the relentless aliens surged through the fires, hacking their way into the heart of the command. Amidst the chaos, Varric whispered a final prayer to the Omnissiah and activated a switch, releasing a data codex into the depths of the base, an enduring legacy of Tion Primus. Many months later, it was recovered by Inquisitor Cryptman, a man dedicated to opposing the Tyranid menace. Had Cryptman not arrived, the fate of Tion Primus might have gone unnoticed by the wider Imperium. For years, Cryptman found the planet a barren, sterile wasteland, once a thriving ocean world, now stripped of every drop of water and morsel of vegetation drained utterly. As he examined the auto-logs within the data codex, the full extent of Tion's destruction became painfully clear. Without delay, Cryptman set out to warn the galaxy about the impending horror lurking beyond the stars, the monstrous threat that had devoured its own world. In the vast and relentless universe of the Tyranids, these predatory creatures, often called the hive mind, pose a devastating threat to entire galaxies. Their relentless expansion has sparked a series of devastating conflicts known as the Tyrannic Wars, with hive fleets, even a single one, representing an existential danger. These fleets, composed of enormous bioorganic ships, push deeper into settled systems, driven by an adaptability that makes them increasingly lethal. The hive mind swiftly learns to overcome prey defenses, evolving tactics with every encounter, making their assaults more ruthless and efficient. Despite their immense diversity in size, form, and hunting style, most hive fleets share core characteristics. Each is built around a collection of colossal hive ships, living vessels armored with thick chitin and a resilient fleshy exterior designed to withstand the harsh conditions of space. These ships often feature an array of tendrils and hooked talons, capable of coiling around and crushing enemy vessels hundreds of miles long into wreckage, while their mighty beaks and gnashing claws serve to consume the biomass they harvest from dying worlds or captured installations. Such ships are not simply mobile weapons, they are colossal ecosystems, teeming with countless warriors born in hidden organ chambers. The true terror, however, lies within these ships. Endless waves of bioengineered organisms spawned from biological chambers. Inside, pulsating organ structures crackle with bioelectric energy, arcs of electricity dancing between synapse-like nodes and dormant queens awakening to lead invasions. Swarms of monstrous bioweapons emerge from bubbling chambers, swarms of hissing creatures scuttling along slimy tunnels, tearing through membrane walls to attack all enemies from every side. Large brood beasts and towering pterigons, constantly spawning more hunter organisms from swollen thoraxes, bolster the invasion, relentlessly pressing forward. The most terrifying aspect of these hive fleets is the relentless tide of war beasts, from ordinary hormagaunts and gargoyles to colossal, nightmare-inducing biotitans held in specialized stasis chambers. These living weapons can tear through entire flotillas of defenses in moments, unleashing chaos and destruction. When multiple hive ships operate in concert, their combined might can devastate entire planetary systems within weeks, stripping worlds of life and leaving nothing behind. To understand and potentially counter the Tyranid threat, Imperial xenobiologists have identified various hive fleets, each with distinct traits that define their organization and hunting strategies. Yet, regardless of their differences, every hive fleet shares a terrifying narrative, an unstoppable force of biological warfare, evolving constantly, embodying the very essence of predatory perfection in the darkest reaches of space. Hive fleets distinguish themselves through unique physical traits and strategic behaviors that highlight their terrifying diversity. For instance, Hive fleet behemoth is often associated with creatures sporting striking blue and mauve hides, while Hive fleet kraken's organisms tend to be deep crimson, and Leviathan's bioforms commonly display a dominating purple hue. Although the exact purpose of these uniform colorations remains uncertain, several theories suggest they could serve functions such as instinctive recognition among bioforms from different fleets, psychological intimidation, or even visual deception to confuse prey with shifting patterns displayed on their armored surfaces. Each Hive fleet also develops its own distinctive hunting tactics, as if everyone experiments with different methods to better predate on the galaxy's intelligent life forms. Hive fleet Yunder, for example, specializes in subterranean assaults, deploying vast swarms of tunneling bioforms that strike from beneath the surface. In contrast, Hive fleet Gorgon is notorious for unleashing toxic spores and biological warfare agents, forcing enemies into combat not only with monstrous tentacled creatures, but also with microscopic spores that can clog lungs and dissolve internal organs. Other fleets rely on ground-shaking masses of living tanks, aerial swarms of winged bioforms, or elusive predators that change their appearance to avoid detection. Many also employ endless waves of expendable war beasts or a combination of these tactics, illustrating the incredible strategic diversity within the Tyranid forces. An impressive trait shared by many fleets is their ability to learn and adapt rapidly from each encounter, making them a constantly evolving threat. On one battlefield, a tactic that seems effective may become useless in the next as the Tyranid collective quickly develops countermeasures. For example, warriors that once confidently fired shells designed to rupture larger bioforms might find their ammunition ineffective once the enemy's armor becomes thicker. Similarly, bioengineered toxins that previously dissolved Tyranids prove futile against new adaptations, forcing the hive mind to modify its offensive capabilities swiftly. Even more disturbing is the phenomenon of preemptive adaptation, where hive fleets seem to anticipate enemy tactics across different battle zones, reacting in ways that are not fully understood, but suggest a nightmarish level of hive mind coordination. This ability to communicate and adapt across distinct fleets introduces horrifying possibilities for their resilience. Eradicating even a single tendril of such a collective becomes an almost impossible task, as the hive can reconfigure itself continuously. The links between separate fleets, each learning from prior defeats and sharing lessons in real time, make the Tyranid threat exceedingly difficult to neutralize, leaving the galaxy perennially vulnerable to their relentless expansion. When a hive fleet is decisively defeated, either on a planetary surface or in the void, some of its forces almost always manage to slip away. These survivors often act driven by primal instincts or guided by hive mind organisms, retreating to ground or fleeing entirely from the battlefield. For a single world, this can mean renewed nightmares, as what was thought to be a defeated foe rises again from hidden depths, sometimes even years or centuries later after the initial attack by the Tyranids. On a broader scale, the situation becomes even more concerning when a tendril of a hive fleet is shattered by battle or disaster. Its remnants, known as splinter fleets, are smaller echoes of the original threat, compact enough to evade pursuit and hide in the void. Over time, these splinter groups can regrow their strength, having fed on enough biomass to replenish their ranks, often learning from the failures of their progenitors. When this happens, they can reemerge to threaten the galaxy once more. Adding to this menace is the pervasive presence of the shadow in the warp, a sinister psychic influence that blankets countless worlds with a vast oppressive darkness. This phenomenon signals the imminent arrival of Tyranid hive fleets and has proven to be a devastating weapon, whether by chance or design. The warp itself is a realm of shifting energy, an infinite mysterious dimension lying beyond real space. It resonates with the passions, obsessions, sorrows, and joys of all living beings, reflecting their vital essences. The warp has served both as a vital tool and a deadly hazard for the galaxy's sentient races. It provides almost limitless power to those who can wield it, powers many psychers harness for interstellar travel and communication, and facilitated humanity's expansion across the stars. The Imperium relies heavily on it for these purposes. Yet, the warp is also rooted in primal emotions, an environment inhabited by malevolent, ancient entities known as demons that seek to consume reality. Because of these hostile beings, extreme caution must be exercised when dealing with the warp, as the risks are immense. Still, avoidance is not an option. Without the energies of this sea of souls, isolated systems would be left vulnerable, flickering like tiny flames in an endless darkness, destined to be extinguished. The shadow in the warp is a psychic muffle that surrounds Tyranid hive fleets, extending vast distances in all directions. Even advanced races like the Eldari remain uncertain about how this shadow infiltrates mortal senses or disrupts their connection with the warp. This phenomenon is unsettling for all, from the most enlightened to the dullest creatures, often inducing anxiety, paranoia, and panic among prey populations. Its presence fosters a sense of gradually spreading dread, pushing mobs toward violence and causing forewarnings of impending Tyranid invasion to be greeted with fear and chaos, sometimes before any direct evidence of their approach is detected. Beings sensitive to the warp often feel the presence of the shadow most intensely. Among those most affected are psychers, orcs, weird boys, and nearly all Eldari beings, whose psychic acuity makes them especially vulnerable to the shadow's insidious influence. Some describe this corrosive effect as an oppressive, static-like blanket that fills their minds, muddling thoughts and hindering their ability to communicate. It manifests as the chattering of endless, unnamed horrors, the relentless scraping of talons across their consciousness, or a profound sense of existential dread so overwhelming that mere survival becomes a struggle. For those actively wielding psychic powers while immersed in the warp's darkness, the toll is even harsher. Accessing their abilities demands extraordinary effort, and exertion in such conditions often leads to madness or catastrophic physical collapse, sometimes accompanied by sudden severe brain hemorrhages. Astropaths attempting to send out distress signals find their mental voices smothered, often dying before their cries can escape the psychic fog. Similarly, navigators whose third eyes should enable precise guidance are blinded and overwhelmed by the shadow, often causing disastrous outcomes during crucial efforts, such as evacuations or convoy guiding in battle. It is largely because of this shadow in the warp that many imperial worlds threatened by Tyranids are left isolated, cut off from aid and silenced, unable even to scream for help. Humans are not the only victims. Most Eldari races suffer merely by proximity to the Tyranids, which subjects them to relentless torment, severely impairing their ability to detect danger or coordinate defenses. Their precious precognitive psychic talents become practically useless once the shadow takes hold, and warp sorcery, along with sanctioned psychic powers, falters under its influence. Even the servants of the dark gods, who rely on such powers, find themselves powerless and vulnerable as the Tyranids descend. Only races with minimal psychic activity, like the Necrons or the Necrontyr, experience less terror from the shadow. Nonetheless, even these immune beings face threats, as the Tyranid hive mind can manipulate its collective will to weaponize its gestalt consciousness against them. How Tyranid beasts manifest abilities that resemble the psychic powers of their prey remains unclear, but as their swarms extend further into the galaxy and their tendrils reach ever outward from the void, they seem to adapt new bioforms, each evolved to mimic or weaponize warp energies. Some xenobiologists suggest these creatures are able to siphon warp energy in controlled ways, distinct from any other life form, while others believe the hive mind's synaptic energies are channeled through their bioconstructs, allowing the Tyranids to continue their relentless assault across the galaxy. Before their unleashing, Tyranids unleashed hissing eruptions of deadly energy, often manifesting as shimmering force fields. These could be amplified into piercing psychic screams or used to drive lesser swarm creatures into frenzied violence. For those confronting these horrors, such displays might seem merely theoretical, but in truth, The Tyranids boast an ominous array of seemingly psychic powers capable of dismantling both mind and body with astonishing ease. The first major conflict of the Tyrannic invasion was led by the monstrous war beasts known as Behemoth, the initial hive fleet identified by the Imperium of Man. After devastating the outpost on Tian Primus, it advanced aggressively through settled regions, carving a relentless path toward the ultramarine stellar empire. Driven by an insatiable hunger, the fleet appeared unstoppable, especially since its true strength was often hidden from sight. Only thanks to the efforts of Inquisitor Kitman, who tracked the fleet's movements, was a warning sent ahead to Ultramar. The Ultramarines responded with their entire chapter, deploying vast defense armies and commanding fleets from across the void to confront this overwhelming threat. Despite their formidable preparations, it was barely enough to slow Behemoth's relentless march. One world after another fell, their ecosystems consumed and their biomass fueling the Tyranid swarm's ever-growing numbers. The idyllic garden world of Prandium was stripped bare, its underground caverns turned into bloody slaughterhouses. Soon the decisive battle on Makrar would determine the course of the war. There, Chapter Master Maris Calgar led his warriors in a heroic effort to withstand the High Fleet's onslaught, fighting desperately to slow and bleed its advance. During the intense battle of Cold Steel Ridge, Calgar was severely wounded by the monstrous creature known as the Swarm Lord. At first, it seemed Behemoth's hunger might succeed. The Ultramarines' defenses appeared overwhelmed. Yet, a well-planned ambush by the Ultramarines' Maul Void Fleet and new ships from Battlefleet Tempestus shattered the High Fleet above the ring world of Circe. On the surface of Makrar, Ultramarine defenders endured a brutal siege, ultimately defeating the Tyranid swarm in their fortified strongholds. However, victory exacted a heavy toll. The Ultramarines' first company was wiped out to the last by the ferocious onslaught of Behemoth. This loss was a grievous wound that the chapter would carry with them. The scattered remnants of Behemoth's fleet continued to harass Ultramar and the wider Imperium, displaying a brutal lack of sophistication, contrasted sharply with the cunning tactics of newer Tyranid factions. Survivors of these encounters report seeing hulking, heavily armored beasts such as Carnifexes and Tyranects, brutal, formidable creatures embodying the ferocity of the Tyranid invasion. Supported by massive bioartillery and swarms of smaller creatures, these living fortresses marched relentlessly across the landscape, crashing into any obstacle in their path. The onslaught was unleashed by the formidable hive ships orbiting above, whose collective mind aimed solely to crush their targets with relentless force before delivering the final blow and beginning their harvest. Such invasions by Tyranid attack forces are a terrifying sight, as dark clouds of toxic fumes blot out the sky, and countless monstrous shapes descend to devastate everything below. These swarms, composed of countless ravenous Tyranids, pour across the land, consuming all in their relentless pursuit. Yet, amidst the chaos and horror, a subtle pattern emerges. While each high fleet operates with its own predatory techniques and instinctive strategies, most invasions follow a similar course, initial probing assaults designed to test and weaken the prey's defenses. These first strikes often feature specialized organisms that have lurked within the planet for months or even years, suddenly shifting to a defensive posture. The Tyranids employ hit-and-run tactics, with specialized bioforms disrupting command chains and supply lines, sowing terror among the inhabitants. At the same time, assault craft rain down from orbit. Many are destroyed by anti-air fire, but those that survive disgorge waves of invasive swarms. Driven by brain-like synapse creatures such as Tyranid, warriors, tervigons, and hive tyrants, the swarm's various forms, termagants and hormigons, launch themselves into the enemy defenses. They overwhelm armed forces, tearing apart vehicles and evacuating personnel, leaving garrisons in ruin. However, this initial phase is merely preparatory. From above, the hive mind directs large flocks of gargantuan creatures such as gargoyles, hive crumbs, and monstrous bioconstructs to herd and exhaust the prey, testing where their defenses are most vulnerable. Once the opposition is pinpointed, subsequent invasion waves adjust their tactics accordingly. If the defenders have fortified tunnels or subterranean complexes, later waves may include vast tunneling swarms of raveners, targs, and mucous membranes, biological tanks like carnifexes or exocrines, capable of pulverizing even the strongest defenses. In the air, the hive mind dispatches flocks of harpies and monstrous bioconstructs to continue the assault, relentless in their pursuit of dominance. In their relentless pursuit to dominate from above, the invaders launch a brutal cosmic offensive against their prey, whose defenses, rooted in both strength and resolve, often falter against overwhelming psychic assaults and monstrous malevolence. Beings capable of withstanding direct onslaughts are nonetheless vulnerable to the toxic fumes emitted by venomous organic predators, gradually eroding their resilience. Over time, the remaining strongholds of the prey, once formidable bastions, succumb through attrition or are shattered in fierce confrontations, their armies devastated as resistance wanes. In response, the hive mind may unleash colossal bioforms, gigantic entities such as the Herent or the Herod abominations, capable of toppling even the mightiest warriors or powerful constructs of their defenders. As the conflict drags on, the fires of combat diminish, transforming what was a war of resistance into a dark game of pursuit and evasion, with surviving defenders desperately fighting to resist or escape. Meanwhile, the tactics of the hive change once more as new bioforms begin to emerge amid the ravaged terrain of the infected world. Unbeknownst to the human or alien defenders, another clandestine war unfolds on a microscopic scale, with tiny swarms of organisms infiltrating and attacking from within. These microscopic invaders seed the planet's atmosphere with swirling clouds of corrosive spores, which begin to warp the native biosphere, transforming the environment into a twisted reflection of its former self. By the time the main armies are subdued, the entire planetary biology has been subverted, repurposed to serve the destructive aims of the invaders. Lurking within this dark transformation, gruesome spore-producing structures of flesh and chitin rise from the planet's surface, alongside bioorganic spores cast from orbit, releasing hazardous clouds that accelerate the planet's decay. These bioforms generate dense, toxic mists that hasten the breakdown of organic life, creating bubbling digestion pools, gigantic lakes of raw biomatter, to be consumed and broken down by colossal fungi-like structures that amplify the hive mind's influence. Nightmarish bioconstructs, towering talons and tangled nests of tendrils crash through residual defenses, tearing down fortifications and spreading parasitic infestations, further entrenching the invaders' presence. Throughout the invasion, smaller organic machines known as rippers relentlessly scavenge and consume all organic matter, from wounded soldiers to fallen creatures. Trillions of these voracious creatures sweep across entire continents, consuming their fill before retreating to digestion pools, where they break down their prey along with their own biomass. Simultaneously, the central figures of the invasion, hulking behemoths, gorge upon any remaining resistance, devouring entire units and fallen enemies before releasing their colossal meals into the digestion basins. Only once all resistance is eradicated do the final stages of the invasion unfold. The hive ships descend into low orbit, clustering around vast capillary-like towers that anchor themselves like ticks feeding on their host, preparing to unleash the ultimate phases of conquest. This dark, relentless campaign renders the planet's very biological essence into a tool of subjugation, ensuring the invaders' dominion is absolute. The Tyranid swarm's relentless consumption transforms entire worlds into barren, lifeless husks, leaving no organic matter untouched. As biomass is gathered, it's funneled into towering structures where it is devoured, ruthlessly and voraciously, by the bioorganic forces. These creatures strip planets of minerals, cracking open mountain ranges to extract their riches, while draining oceans until only cracked, barren bedrock remains. Every trace of life, down to microscopic bacteria, is consumed, with even the planet's atmosphere torn away and scattered into the void. By the time the hive ships retreat into mere space once more, little remains of the once thriving worlds, leaving behind bleak, dead wastelands. The Tyranids' arsenal of war is entirely organic, a terrifying fusion of living organisms and weaponry. Some examples include heavily armored chitinous shells, chameleonic flesh capable of blending seamlessly into surroundings, and spores that release deadly gases. These tools are intrinsic to the bioforms that carry them, often grown within the hive ships and seamlessly grafted onto the warriors, creating a grotesque harmony of organism and armament. The warriors and their living weapons form a horrifying sight where it's difficult to distinguish where the creature ends and its equipment begins, linked by pulsating tubules, growths, and membranous structures of fused flesh. Most Tyranids are equipped with formidable fangs and talons, alongside slick, quivering appendages resembling guns or blades, all of which are part of their anatomy. Every part of a warrior's bioform can serve as a weapon, ranging from toxins and corrosive acids to fleshy spines designed for stabbing prey. Some carry even more disturbing devices, such as hidden stingers on tails or entangled nests of tendrils, capable of piercing or incapacitating enemies unexpectedly. Many warriors are felled when foes believe they have destroyed a weapon or struck a lethal blow, only to be impaled by concealed bioweapons. From the perspective of prey species, the line between the warrior and its weapon is vague. Every Tyranid is an organic war machine, as much a part of the hunt as the weapons they wield. This organic and alien technology is highly adaptable, making it difficult for even the most advanced opponents to counter. It drives a dangerous arms race, with prey species struggling to keep pace, often falling behind, outflanked, and outnumbered. Following the defeat of the High Fleet behemoth, some Imperial observers believed the Tyranid threat was finally over. The mighty alien menace had been subdued. They pointed out that each invasion was destructive, but ultimately a minor threat within the broader scope of the Imperium. Yet it would take centuries before this assumption was truly challenged, as the Tyranids' relentless hunger and adaptive capabilities proved they remained a persistent and deadly force. The most dangerous form of unwarranted optimism appeared at the onset of the Second Tyranid invasion, later known as High Fleet Kraken. This invasion was subtle and insidious, as the new fleet divided its forces into multiple tendrils. Such a strategy enabled Kraken to attack numerous planets simultaneously and extend the reach of its influence across a far broader area of space, spreading a shadow within the warp. Consequently, it took a considerable amount of time before Imperial authorities received any warning of the invasion. During this delay, many worlds fell victim to the relentless advance of the alien force. When the Imperial response finally launched and the Second Tyrannic War was officially declared, humanity uncovered the true nature of this terrifying threat. High Fleet Kraken was a ferocious predator, constantly seeking to encircle, flank, and surprise its prey. Before the main force could strike, vanguard organisms swarmed ahead, destabilizing entire worlds through covert acts of destruction and sabotage. Meanwhile, tunneling organisms penetrated human defenses, circumventing well-fortified positions and attacking from unexpected directions. Kraken attacked on more fronts than the Imperium could adequately defend, forcing humanity to sacrifice less vital worlds and systems in a desperate attempt to safeguard key strategic locations. As the invasion intensified, the pale hides of crimson-colored tendrils from High Fleet Kraken began appearing in an increasing number of systems. Humanity's armies could do little but retreat before such an overwhelming force. In this critical moment, several Space Marine chapters heroically rose to confront the threat. Their valiance was undeniable, and they succeeded in damaging and slowing the advancing fleet. However, their sacrifices exacted a heavy toll. The chapters of the Space Marines suffered devastating losses, with some driven to the verge of extinction and one entire chapter wiped out. The ultimate victory against Kraken was achieved during a decisive encounter when the fleet unleashed its greatest tendrils upon the world of IAR-4. The reasons behind the fleet's sudden change in tactics remain unknown, but it was during this battle that the Imperium had a real opportunity to deal a final blow to the Xenos. During the prolonged and brutal conflict that ensued, the Tyranids introduced many new organisms, including the deployment of biotransporters for the first time. It was Chapter Master Maris Calgar who led the counter-offensive, arriving on IAR-4 with a formidable Ultramarines force. His masterful coordination and strategic defense eventually eradicated the Tyranid presence from the planet's surface and nearby voids. Although High Fleet Kraken was decisively defeated and the planet was destroyed in the process, scattered splinter fleets and smaller tendrils remained, a sign that the Xenos threat was not entirely eradicated. Just a few years later, the Third Tyrannic War erupted when High Fleet Leviathans surged through the galactic plane. This was the largest and most widespread invasion to date, clearly demonstrating that the Tyranids had learned from their earlier defeats, especially the fate of Behemoth. By the time the High Fleet Leviathan launched its devastating invasion, the threat posed by the Tyranid swarms had become widespread across the galaxy. Numerous smaller Hive fleets had been identified as dangerous by the Imperium, some fragments of the colossal Behemoth or Kraken fleets, while others were entirely distinct entities uniquely adapted to their own tactics. Many of these smaller fleets, once Leviathan began its assault, shifted their focus to support, hide behind, or even parasitize the largest fleets, resulting in Leviathan's forces spreading out into legion-like swarms. Their tendrils extended so extensively that no region of the galaxy remained untouched by the Tyranid menace. Imperial forces that endured Leviathan's initial assault reported an alarming increase in the presence of comparable warrior organisms linked through a highly sophisticated neural web. Its influence cast a shadow across the warp, smothering and amplifying the Tyranid threat, more formidable than ever before. Entire armies and even whole alien species found themselves unable to withstand the relentless advance, fleeing in despair from the overwhelming onslaught. Among the first Imperial leaders to confront High Fleet Leviathan was Inquisitor Kryptman, believing that any means necessary were justified to halt the Tyranids. Drawing upon his vast resources accumulated over decades, he launched a series of exterminatus strikes on planets directly threatened by the swarm. His reasoning was that decimating planets would starve the Tyranids, slowing their advance. Though some success was achieved, it was insufficient. Trillions of Imperial lives were sacrificed in his attempts, leading to accusations of heresy and ultimately his excommunication. Kryptman's efforts were not yet over. He proceeded to engineer the release of a brood of captured gene stealers within the Orc-controlled Octarius Empire. His plan was to lure a tendril of Leviathan's fleet into the Orc domain, igniting a brutal conflict, hoping the Orcs would destroy each other. However, this strategy backfired. The Orcs thrived amidst the chaos, providing the Tyranids with an almost endless supply of biomass, which fueled their rapidly growing swarms. The green-skinned warlords actively engaged in the fighting, their brutal combativeness escalating daily. The Imperial defenders struggled to contain the chaos spreading through the Octarius sector, with the conflict threatening to spill over into neighboring Imperial worlds. In an effort to halt the relentless tide of Xenos incursions, Inquisitor Nasser Sahans and his colleagues established a defensive barrier known as the Cordon Imperium, a containment perimeter designed to contain the chaos. Yet, by the time Tyranid and Orc forces launched their assaults, the situation had already deteriorated significantly. The crisis continued to deepen every day, exemplifying the numerous and devastating war zones erupting across the galaxy, where the combined forces of the galaxy struggled against this inexorable alien threat. High Fleet Leviathan descended upon the shrine world of Sa-Caspin, transforming it into a battleground shaped by relentless tunneling horrors and a cunning, stealthy organism known as the Death Leaper. This was undeniable proof that even the most fervent faith could not shield worlds from the terrifying advance of this menace emerging from the void beyond known space. During the Battle of Bloodstar, the Imperial fleet suffered irreplaceable losses, discovering too late that the hive mind had gained new mastery of ambush tactics, learning from recent encounters with swarm-based enemies. The mighty forge world of Griffin IV also succumbed to Leviathan's insidious grasp, his precious archives lost amid the crushing chaos wrought by mindless beasts. Entire systems, Pie Haven, Ninth Gift, Jom's Rest, and ABT Traw fell silent and dark, their last signals echoing warnings of the Tyranid threat spilling in from the far reaches of the Segmentum Obscurus into the heart of the Segmentum Solar. As the flames of the Third Tyrannic War blazed higher, the Great Rift tore open, splitting the Imperium in half by a maelstrom of warp storms that cut off countless worlds from the Astronomicon. These isolated systems became easy targets for Leviathan's relentless assault, yet even the worlds still within the Emperor's light suffered, battered by demonic phenomena, plagues of mutation, and catastrophic infrastructure collapses. Everywhere communication and coordination faltered as High Fleet Leviathan pushed forward, exploiting humanity's chaos like a predator striking into a fragmented, panicked prey. Despite its dominance, the hive mind faced challenges. The chaos unleashed by the Great Rift sometimes aided its expansion, but it also plunged vast galaxy regions into madness and chaos, overrun by hostile warp entities. These entities offered nothing that could sustain the swarm, forcing Leviathan to adapt its methods of warfare. To avoid starvation, the hive mind began slaughtering or corrupting prey, turning potential sustenance into battlefield fodder. In doing so, Leviathan inadvertently aligned with the broader fight against chaos, consuming all races crossing its path, driven by a ruthless instinct for survival and dominance.